Getting ready to do the other side of 1993 L300, swapping out those single piston calipers over for a dual piston and the power stop rotors. It's a little bit of a pain in the ass, a little bit, I mean a lot, I'd say, for someone that doesn't know what the hell they're doing, but I think I was successful. I got to check to make sure when I turn the wheel full back and forth that this wants to go with. Might have to adjust that, but other than that, new braided lines, new rotors, calipers, pads, all power stop, and I bought it in some package and it was pretty cheap. Reused that hard line, but all the fittings that are different and whatnot. Got in here and took this all apart. It was some work. Cut that shield to allow for the caliper to fit. Plus it's freaking red. It's gonna look badass. But that's what we're doing. Let me get ready to do the other side and see if I can't make it make sense for folks. That's the rotors that were in the package, and this is the package. It's from Rock Auto at KC 498126, whatever. That was the whole thing. Caliper, rotor, brake pad kit, and got it all in there for 300 bucks. Can't beat that. Well, first thing I did was I've gone through and I PV blasted everything that I'm going to be taking off, because I'm not just doing the calipers and the brakes and changing out the lines. If I'm changing out the rotors, this has got to take it down to the hub, and that was a little bit of doing. These little suckers, these Allens, are a real bear. Make sure you got a good set of those. I'll try to remember to tell you guys sizes. What is that? 8mm? Yeah, 8mm. I'll try to tell you sizes as I go, but we got to get in here. There's a retaining clip in there. We'll have to get off. Please forgive, I am not a technically savvy person. I'll tell you what it is and show you what it is, but what it might be called is probably totally different than what I'm calling it. Got to get in there. I'll show you. Take that clip out, pull that. Then we got to loosen these Allens. Take that, get this guy off. Then once we do that, and I do that now with the caliper still on, because putting a screwdriver in there to stop this from moving as you're trying to wrench on these, I mean, if this thing's gone and you're struggling. Then these bolts here have nuts on the back side behind there and in here, and you can't really access those until you take the caliper off. So that would be one of the, have to get that off, and then these, but we'll try and loosen them before I take that off. Kind of like when you take the tire off, you know, loosen the lug nuts a little bit before you take it off the car. But that's where I am, and I'll be back. So the first thing you're going to want to do is get that retaining clip off. So you can pull this. This is the end of the axle, if you will, hub or whatever, and everything will slide off of that. Once we're able to take that clip off, that's what's holding it all in. I'm trying to point at that clip right there. You get a pair of these little guys, and maybe a pick or two or something like that. And a lot of swearing and whatnot, and you'll get that to come off. If you can see, I kind of got that starting right there. See them coming out, and then you pop forward, and usually using that pair of pliers that there. So you get him off. There's probably a shim behind him too or whatnot, but that's all you really need right now is to get that off. And then once you take these bolts out, this will come off. That's first step. So in order to get these out, I went and I took anything, screwdriver, whatnot, and just put it in the slot of the rotor, you know, just to keep it from moving. But I gotta go down here to do that. So slid that in there. Stop. Trying to do it and video at the same time. It's not really working too well. Then I got a, yeah, it is 8mm Allen on there, and these things are a mother grabber. I'll tell you what, these things are on there like someone's getting paid to put them on. So I got a big old piece of pipe, the persuader, and this would be a two-hander, but let's see if I can do it with one. Just I like to get a handle on that sucker and just give it a crack. Yeah, it ain't playing. Those guys put those on there. They were proud to do so. So go ahead and do all those, crack those, and then get that loose. Okay, so we got those off. You can take that center Johnson off. Should be bearing or whatnot in there. Just I don't know. Oh yeah, the bearing's in there. Gotta get that out. So you got those screws. They're just number 2 Phillips. This is like a retaining clip for the hub nut. It's underneath. See that little tab right there? That once you get that nut underneath, torqued and whatnot to what you need it to be, then this washer gets screwed in there, and that notch keeps it from spinning out. So we gotta take those 4 screws out, and then we'll get in there. So you took those 4 screws out, and there ain't no secret to it really. I mean, it's just I think a number 2. It might even be a number 3 Phillips, but number 2 worked fine for me. Just make sure that you push real hard on those, because you don't want to start turning them and strip them out or whatnot. Push really hard on it when you give it a little click. They aren't really torqued in there. They're just retaining screws or set screws or whatever. There's not a lot of pressure on them, so it's not that bad, but they've been there for what, 20 some years, so it's going to be a little bit of a problem. Then once you get those out, you got to get like a pick or whatnot and pull that clip out, or I don't know, retaining washer. Someone knows what it's called, but that person ain't me. All right, next you got this nut, this guy. You got to turn him out because he's on all these threads right here. All right, so you got to take him out so we can progress. But make sure when you're doing it, you're gonna use these larger holes. See these larger holes? There's 2, one on either side. Forgive the shadow. I'm doing the best I can to have it lit. Don't put anything in these little guys. Those are your threaded holes that that you're gonna need to put those screws back in. But these here are designed to be used. You can probably turn it by hand or whatever, but maybe not. What I got was, went down to AutoZone or whatever your local parts store is, and this is a 4-wheel drive hub. I don't know, doesn't really matter. They'll have a 4-wheel drive hub wrench, and it has 4 little knobs on it, because they ain't used to some 1993 Mitsubishi having just 2. So you take a grinder wheel and cut off 2 of those, and maybe mess with these a little bit so that they can fit in there, and you can get them in that little hole, and it goes on your half drive wrench. That should just turn by hand. You see it. I'm using my left hand, which ain't a good idea, but once that's going, it should just unscrew. Come on, baby. Almost there. So exciting. It's like watching the wheel on Price is Right. Waiting for it to land on $1. Nope. 5 cents. All right. So I got a little box and just put all the crap in there. Now there's a bearing in there, and it'll want to probably fall out if you didn't pay attention. But let's see how she'll want to come off now. She's ready to come off now. All right, but obviously we got the caliper on still. So now we can get to doing that, but I'm gonna first take off these bolts, or loosen these bolts like I said. I was gonna crack those first, because I just think it's easier to, oh no, you can't. Yeah, you can. I'm just gonna crack them. And the nut on the back ain't gonna let them go nowhere. But go ahead and give these things all a crack. I think it's 14 mil. Sorry if my camera working perfect. Yeah, 14. All right, so I'm gonna put that thing in there again. Whatever, my needle nose pliers, and give that a wrench in. Let's see if we can't break those loose. All right, back to commercial. All right, I ain't a professional, so I ain't gonna video edit or nothing. I'm just keeping on going, but hopefully you watch this video all the way through, catch my mistakes. When I started messing with this a little bit, getting ready to wrench on this, I noticed this was pretty loose since I had taken that washer off, that retaining hub nut off. So I went and I put it back on just to keep it stable, because that bearing that's in there, you know, it was just moving around too much. So if I was wrenching on this real hard, which you got to do, you got to wrench on it really hard. It was just making that move, and I was thinking maybe I might damage something in here. So I said, forget it. So I put that back in. I didn't put the retaining clip in. I didn't do that. I didn't put that back. I just put that back in, finger tight, whatever. And that's keeping it nice and stable. I'll crack those nuts, and then we'll take the rotor off, or the caliper off. Now here's where I think the biggest pain in the butt is, really, is these freaking nuts on these hard lines. These things are the worst. They freaking roll over like nobody's business. Round over, I should say. They're 10 millimeter, but they don't sure feel like it. They just, man, I think they're like 10.5 or something. I don't know. Or I'm sorry, 9.5. Just don't fit on there good. Well, anyway, you got to take this clip out first. Pull this clip out. Oh, hey. Oh, that's right. I loosened that earlier. I was like, holy crap. That's, yeah. So, yeah, pull that out. That'll take some wrenching. It won't be that easy, I promise. No, it's all that easy. Yeah. But then there's a couple of bolts. This one here, you got to get out. And then on the other side, there's that one there too. And then this clip will come off. So I can already see that this thing's going to give me a hard time. So getting underneath here to get that nut with that wrench, I'd rather be able to see it and see what I can do to get that out of there. And we got to reuse this clip too later. So we're going to crack this. This is going to drip. Got a little container to drip it into and whatnot. And we'll figure that out. I'll show you here in a second. All right. So I took those two nuts out, or bolts out, and save those because you're gonna need them later. And that bracket right there too. And I cracked the nut on this guy here, so that I thought I did. Yeah, I did. Pardon my sausage fingers, but there's that. She's gonna drip. And save the bracket, of course. And that other guy online, Rio, he shows you how to cut that and bend it to reuse it. But yeah, we need that. Put it in the box. All right, and now you gotta get this off. This is the fun one here. This one came out really easy. It was nice. Unusual, but nice. And we gotta get this guy off of here again. That's it. Allegedly 10 millimeter, and then we'll just let that drip into the thing, and we'll get on that caliper. Freaking 10. These things suck. Because once you roll it over, round it over, you're basically done. Gotta get something else. Oh well, I'm not gonna cry anymore. That's what we gotta do. And just a heads up, these two caliper bolts were absolute bare. Those things were freaking locked in. But there's also on the back side a little screw they just kind of snuck in there in the shield, and on the back side of the caliper you got to get that too. And you can take it off. Okay, so to get these off, I'm still leaving that nut in just to keep that stable. And you can probably take that nut out and pull the whole thing off and do it on a bench, but I don't have a vise, so I'm doing what I can, and this kind of holds it for me while I do it. So all I do is use an open end wrench on the back side, 14 mil on the back side of it, and deep well in the front, and crack it, you know, and that's about it. Just take them all off. But there's a lock washer on the back. These things are looking pretty rough. But I'll clean them up. I'll wire brush them and then put some PB on there and just have them sit. And I'm reusing them. They'll be fine. That's it. All right, so we got all those bolts out. Gonna clean those things up, and we're gonna take that nut off again. And this whole thing should just come off. You can take it to the bench, or floor, I like to call it, and separate these two. All right, there's that. Back of the box. There's that. Okay, so one-handed, this should come, yeah. And again, there's a bearing in here. Apologizing for the filming. One hand. I should have thought this through. Let go. There she is. There's the bearing. Like I said, would fall out, and did. Don't know if it needs replaced or whatnot, but I'd rather keep the original stuff in there. It's lasted this long. Let's not disrespect it. So there's that. So the hub, or I'm sorry, the rotor that we need separates at this point. So we need to pop this away from this. And the best way I found to do that was to get in here with like a thick screwdriver. I have a cold chisel. Well, it's a brick set, but it's a fat. If I had a cold chisel, a little thin masonry chisel, it's kind of perfect. And you just kind of drive it in there and put it on the ground. I'll show you in a minute. But you wedge it in between here and here, and then you hit it, turn it, hit it, you know, go all the way around the perimeter. And then this guy, this little doohickey will come off of here. And then put the new one on here, and it'll all this will come with this stuff here. This will all go with this, and then your new rotor will go on. It'll look spiffy, but that's that. All right, let's go take this apart. Yeah, this is that tool bench I was telling you about, which is a piece of OSB laying on the floor. So this is that cold chisel, or this is a brick set, but cold chisel looks similar to this, and it's narrower. It's like just the width of this all the way down, and with the thickness on here, I mean, it's kind of perfect, actually. This isn't. That other one would be, but this does pretty good. So what we gotta do is hold the camera and get this in here, just in between there and there, you know. Give it a tap. It'll start separating. Then go all the way around, and it'll come apart. Actually, it looks pretty easy. And that all slides out with it. Goes that way. I'm pointing off camera. That's how I roll. All right, I'll be back in a sec. So she's separated. What also helps is if you have a few other screwdrivers, and you kind of wedge them in as you go around, and it'll help. Instead of, like, you know, going around the clock and it just keeps going back to where it was, you just put those in as like little shims or whatever, and it'll start to pop out. But now she wants to come out. So that whole thing comes with. So there's that. Old rotor. And that's what we got now. So we just take this and put that on the new rotor, and clean it up a little bit, of course. And we'll probably throw some grease in there too, but that's essentially it. I'll show you when I'm done putting it back together. But we'll just grab that other rotor, put it on there, and reverse the process, put those bolts back on, and we start working on putting it back together. Pretty easy, huh? All right, well, there's your new power slot rotor. You got to make sure you use the right ones, because there's one for the left and one for the right. How do I know? Because they look. Here's the front driver's side. Of course, on our L300s, they are not the driver's side, but you know where it's supposed to go. So there's that, and here's this, and she goes in there. She lines up, and we line up the bolt hole. Look, I dropped it in. It was like freaking perfect. Amazing. Bolt it up. Keep going. All right. Well, that's all bolted up now, so that's ready to go back on. But we can't put that on because when you go to put the calipers on, apparently this this shield is in the way. So you gotta take the. Oh, did I mention that the new calipers were freaking powder coated red? Yeah, it's gonna go so much faster now. So just take those bolt holes, line them up with those bolt holes, get you a little magic marker or Sharpie, and mark that where you got to cut it somewhere in here, down here. Get rid of that so you can put that in, because if you don't do that now and put the rotor back on, it's just going to be stupid. So there's that. Now we'll have to mess with these lines, replacing these and the fittings in here and up here. And there's another line we got to replace somewhere under here. I'll figure that out too. But yeah, let's get cutting with the grinder wheel. That's what I'm using. Easy peasy. Yep, and easy. So that's what it looks like when I cut it. I just kind of went just to the left of it a little bit. There's a little bit of a notch out. It's hard to hold. I'm holding the rotor in my left hand. This little notch right there. But other than that, it's pretty much just straightforward, straight up and down, I mean. And that's it. Now I'm going to put the whatchamacallit on. Slide that thing on. Get that in. I added some grease to it and everything. Get that in. Bearing, packed that with some grease. Slid it all on. You can see there's play in it, obviously, and then we'll just put that nut on like we did before. I'm just going to put it on for now. I cleaned the rotor, the back side of the rotor, not the front yet. Then we'll start working on the brake lines. But we're just going to put that nut on temporary just to hold it. And then we'll have to torque it to spec later before we finish. Okay, so we got a couple more of these clips to get out and get going on the lines. There's one here to pull out from the side, and then there's one up here as well, and we'll have to crack that. Again, being very careful not to round over those nuts. Then we'll have to mess with the caliper, the hard line for the caliper, getting that to work and making the bracket out of the old bracket that we saved. And we'll get into that in a second. All right, so here's essentially the line you're going to make up to replace the old. You're going to start from up here, tying into the existing. Another 9-inch line, I think it is, that comes down into the fittings for that area as well. That bracket and that clip, we'll have to put that clip back in there. There's another clip up for that one there. And then the last line will tie into our hard line for our caliper bracket. But the pieces are all these Russells, is what we got. Russell Advanced Fluid Transfer 3-1. Well, the ones at the top, the first one is the 641411. That's what it's called. But if you just go with that model number, that'll get you that. That'll give you that top one. Then this little 9-inch line is the 656012. That, and then you are to the 641. Oops, sorry. Glare 641431. That gets you to this one in the middle, and then we're back to another one of the 411s. Another 9-inch line, and then another 411. So that's what you'd need. You need the 411, 1, 2, 3 times. Then the 431, 1 time, 2 9s. and that should get you there. All right, and then of course, if you're doing the whole job, you got to double it. That's essentially it. I'm pretty sure it was the same thing on the opposite side. I'd be surprised if it wasn't, but I'm pretty sure it was. So there's that. I'm gonna install those in those clips. Boom, boom. Leave this one hanging, and then we're gonna mess with the caliper hard line. So that's kind of what we're talking about as far as making that hard line, make that bend to get in here. It's a little bit off. I'm gonna mess with it a little bit further, but you gotta be careful not to kink these. Just bend these the best you can. And that bracket that we stole, repurposed, I just kind of cut part of it off and, you know, made it work. You have to spread this opening here a little bit wider to get these fittings in there. Then get that clip on there, but yeah, you can see it's a little bit at an angle. I'm gonna have to fix that a little bit more, but you get the idea. That's what you gotta do. And then that's the fitting that goes to the last hose. We're getting there. All right, well, I stopped messing with this last night because putting the pads in the calipers and the clip or whatnot, man, that was turned out to be a real pain in the ass. I think I was just getting tired and I got frustrated or whatnot. So I stopped and just started messing with this after work today. And that's where I am, finishing up those lines. Obviously getting that caliper back on with the pads in it correctly. That hose or hard line that we bent is back in there. What else do we talk about? You know, just making all those connections, putting that bearing back in, and then that nut, if you will, the hub nut, putting that in. What I read was 138 foot-pounds. It was something NM or whatever, and I converted it about to 138, or I'm sorry, 128 foot-pounds. You tighten that freaking nut all the way over on that bearing, and then you back it off to 0, and then you tighten it back to 18. Which you've already pressed that bearing all the way in there real tight, and of course the wheel won't move when you do that. Then you back it off, crack it off to loose, and then start tightening it back up with your fingers or whatnot, and just grabbing the hub wrench and doing it with that. But then you put it back, set the torque wrench to 18, and heck, you can't use a pinky and you're back to 18. So all it's doing is holding that bearing where it's supposed to be. And then this keeper nut with the tab right there, that tab, once you've set those 4 screws, I mean, there's no chance of it backing out. It can't turn because of that notch in there. So we're gonna put the rest of that back on, those Allen nuts or Allen screws, and then that retaining clip. We gotta put that back in on there as well. I'm gonna do that. Put that hubcap thing, not hubcap, the free hubcap back on, and clean up those rotors and bleed the brakes. I think that's all I got to tell you about all this. If I knew what I was doing, I mean, I probably would have had this done in a day, easily. Both sides, not a big deal. It's once you get all the parts and stuff and know that it's going to work, because doing the one side, I was scared to death. And talking to a buddy on here, one of the guys, Rio, on here, talked me down off my ledge and said, just freaking do it. It's right. Use them. They're good. And I just forced myself through it. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess it is good. And it worked. And we'll see. If you read something in the paper about some guy in Cleveland smashing his weird-ass van into a bridge embankment, then that was me, and it didn't work, and just hit delete on this video. Oh, yeah, before I forget, or I did forget, now I'm just remembering, is there's a brake line in the back on the rear axle. It's mounted. This guy. It's right there on the axle, and then there's another. The other end is right up here. You can replace that thing too with the braided line, which I got, and that's that sucker, 656062. I haven't done it yet, but I don't see any reason why it wouldn't fit. You're gonna need 2 more of those Johnnies. Don't ask me where that lid is to tell you the number, but you know what I'm talking about, the other ones. And last little tip I'll share, because I like to pat myself on the back every once in a while. You know how I was telling you that this brake line fitting, it was like between a 10 and a 9 or whatever wrench I didn't have. It wasn't standard, it ain't metric. It wasn't tight between 10 or whatever. So I was really struggling getting that off and trying to round them over. I was actually reverting to using channel locks. You know, I don't want to do that at all, but I need to get the freaking thing off. Crescent wasn't working. I even got a pipe wrench on it once. I have a little mini 8-inch pipe wrench, the smaller version of that guy, to get it on there. Because, I mean, it'll leave teeth marks, but it'll get it off, I guarantee freaking to you. But then I had a revelation. What's better than one 10mm wrench? Two 10mm wrenches. So it covered more surface area on the nut, and I just wrenched it and it came off. Hey, so if you're struggling with those things, not one, but two. That's it. And then don't forget to bleed everything and do all that. But that's the last thing I'm going to do. Then I'll go bleed these suckers, and I'm done. Hope this is helpful.